Hi everyone, welcome to the Second Pays Projects podcast. It is currently Tuesday, October 17th. I have my phone here for notes. It has been probably a month and a half since I last did my last episode, and I think I'm going to start doing weekly podcasts because I'm a little overwhelmed with everything I have to show you, because I like to keep the video under 40 minutes if possible because it can get a little bit boring when it's too long. So I thought we would start with some sewn finished objects. First, I made this adorable top. This is the Donna top by Coralina Patterns, and this is what the back looks like. It is a keyhole back, and it also snaps. It was technically supposed to button, but snaps are more accessible, and I added 4 snaps here. I love how it fits. I did have to adjust the neckline because it was too high and it felt like I was choking. So I made that adjustment, and it was definitely tricky to figure out how to do this back neck part. I did figure it out eventually. I actually started this top over a year ago and I just couldn't figure it out. So I scrapped that and used the fabric for something else, and I made this top and cut it all out with new fabric, and I finally figured it out. It took me several days, but I finally did it. Next thing that I made since the last podcast are some tubie pads. These set around my feeding tubes like this, and it just helps keep them dry and clean. I found the pattern for them on Etsy. It's just a embroidery program that I plug into my sewing machine, so I will link that to the description box below. Next, I made this project bag. It is a flat bottom project bag. It is technically supposed to have interfacing in the bottom. I did not add it because this was my first and I didn't know how it would turn out, so I didn't want to waste any material. I used scraps for this, which is why there's a different colored front and back, but it's a project bag, so it doesn't really matter that much. It is drawstring, and it has pockets on the inside. When I make this, again, I'm not adding the pockets because I just don't really use them that much. But I do still really enjoy it. Trying to figure out where I put my next. Here we go. I've also made these yarn cozies. So how they work, and I chose really bad ribbon for this. The other ones I've done much higher quality ribbon. How they work is you open them up like this, you set your cake of yarn in, and then you close this flap. It helps make it more adjustable, and cinch it up and tie it. After you tie it, you also need to make sure that your center pole is coming out the top of it. And it just helps keep your yarn cakes organized. These are, the pattern for these is by Hook, Wand, and Stitch on Etsy, and I will link it. This one and a couple of others that I've made, I did follow the pattern exactly using the exact measurements given. And then I've also made 15 more to sell at work, and I heavily altered how everything was measured for those. I don't really remember how I did. I just know that I wrote down the measurements. I made some parts of it much bigger, some parts smaller. I also measured the ribbon differently, so that there's more ribbon to tie. Because of my disabilities, tying things is difficult on my hands, so I wanted to make sure that they were accessible to more people. So I made 18 of these total, and I really enjoy them. Let's see what's next. I've also made a couple of sewn garments, which I do not have on hand with me, so as I talk about them, I will pop pictures of them up right next to me. The first is the Liston dress by Trama Pattern Studios. It is a really cozy, I wouldn't necessarily say cozy, but comfy dress that has drop sleeve caps that are connected to the bodice, there we go, of the dress, so you're not having to add sleeves in, which is really nice. And it is a short sleeve dress pattern. Then it has a gathered waist and is pretty long. It goes around mid calf on me. I really like the length of it. I prefer longer dresses. And there are no zippers or buttons or anything, so it's super easy to take on and off, which also made it a lot easier to sew. I cut and sewed it in one day, so it is very doable as a one-day project. And then I also took the skirt pattern from that dress and made a skirt out of it because I really liked how it fit. And both the dress and skirt have pockets, which is part of the pattern, and you can never pass up a dress or skirt with pockets. And so I'm calling that the Liston skirt. I'm not sure if she has an actual pattern using the skirt pattern, but I do have a vlog that I will upload about how I made the skirt. I just need to finish editing it. And it also hits around mid-calf. Instead of doing an only gathered waist, I also added elastic because I didn't want to have to add a zipper or buttons. So I cut out the skirt pattern exactly as I did with the dress, and then I also created my own waistband that was a couple of inches bigger than my hip measurements so that I could easily pull it up. And then I gathered the skirt down to the waistband, added my elastic, and I had a skirt. I also made that in one day, so it's also very doable. And I think that is it for my sewn finished objects. I did do a lot of sewing this past month and a half. Now that it's getting colder out, I'm more into knitting again. I kind of bounce between the two. When it's cooler out, I like to knit more. When it's warmer out, I like to sew more because I can actually wear what I've made. So let's get into my knit finished objects. The first thing I'm going to talk about is some socks that I've made on my circular sock machine for my boss. I actually work at a local yarn shop called YarnCom. It's in St. Louis, Missouri, and I just recently, over the summer, got a circular sock machine, so my boss asked me to make her socks out of some of her stash, which I was more than happy to do. So I will pop up pictures of them on the screen because I do not have them with me. The first pair of socks I made was out of Desert Panda Fiber Arts, an everyday sock set in their French lavender colorway, and they turned out great. So what I did was I used the mini skein for the cuff of them, and the toes on the tall socks, and then I had plenty left over for a pair of shorties, so I also made her a pair of shorties. I absolutely love using my sock machine. I can make a pair of socks in around 2 hours. And then the next pair of socks I made was by Dye Mad Yarns in their Chester sock in the colorway Aquarius. And I did a tall sock pair using a contrast cuff. I do hung hem cuffs for my CSM socks, and ironically, you should really only use fingering weight with it, but neither Heather or I realized that the mini was a DK weight, but I made it work, and so I did the contrast cuff only for those tall socks, and then I also made a pair of shorties. I was really hoping I could get a pair of tall socks and shorties out of one skein, but I just don't quite have enough for it to be the height that I want on the tall socks, which is totally fine. So I got those done. And then the next pair of socks I did was out of the Casual Fashion Queen in the colorway Fox, which is a variegated sock yarn. I really love working with the variegated and seeing how it works up. And I used only that for the tall socks. I have not made the pair of shorties yet. I am going to get a contrast mini skein for those on Wednesday. And those turned out really good. I do use around 70 grams for a pair of tall socks using only yarn, like no contrast colors. So using only the main color in the socks, and then I use about 40 grams total for a pair of shorties. So all in all, I can get quite a bit done out of each skein. So those are the socks that I've made, and once again I will pop up pictures which you will have already seen on the screen. So let me go back to my finished objects. The next thing that I finished were some hats. In my last episode, I showed these hats as my work in progresses, and I'm very proud that I got them finished. So this is the first one. The colorway is La Vie en Rose by Potion Yarns, and it is a gorgeous pastel pink with darker pink speckles. It is a sock weight yarn. I used the Dryad sock base, which is a merino nylon cashmere blend, and it's just a really nice lightweight hat. As it is becoming fall here in the Midwest, it is chilly out but not quite warm enough for a heavier weight hat, so I'm happy to have this completed to keep my ears warm. The next hat I finished is this one. It is in Mad Tosh DK, and Mars in Retrograde is the colorway. And for all of these hats that I'm showing you, I did not use a pattern. I just cast it on enough stitches, did ribbing, and then stockinette, and then I calculated the decreases for the crown. This hat does have a folded brim, and I love the dark specks in it. It adds really nice contrast. So I'm really happy with this, and it'll be really nice for the cooler days where I need some extra layering on my ears. And then finally, I finished this hat out of the Cascade 220 Superwash Fingering. It is for a family friend who is going through some medical trials at the moment. So I've been making her some hats, and It is in navy blue, if I remember correctly. I'm not 100% sure the name of the colorway, and it's a really nice navy. And this is also fingering weight, so it'll be a nice lightweight hat, and it has a lot of stretch to it, which is very nice. So those are my hat finished objects. I also have some yarn that I dyed. I was going to do this Stephen West Geo Gradient in Cow, but I do not love how the new Clue One is constructed, so I have decided to use that yarn for a different project, which, let me pull up the name of it because I did find the project. The yarn I dyed is a purple and turquoise gradient, and for the shawl that I'm going to use it for, I only need 3 out of 4 of the colors, so I'm using the 4th color for making yarn cozies, which I will show you in just a minute. And so I'm really happy with how the yarn colors turned out. The darkest purple is more of a blue purple. I was not planning on doing a purple and turquoise gradient. I was going to only do turquoise, but my 2 middle colors ended up being too close together, so I decided to dye the darker one into a purple. And I do have a swatch. This was part of the original Clue One, so I've decided just to use it as my swatch. So these are the colors. This is the darkest turquoise, the middle turquoise. This is the lightest purple, which I know looks very pink on camera. It is more of a pink purple. And then this is the darkest purple. And I'm going to be making the Napa shawl. It is spelled N-A-P-P-E. It might just be Nap shawl. I'm not 100% sure. It is by Justina Lor. I'm going to put her name up on the screen because I am going to completely butcher it. And I will also link the pattern down below. It is gorgeous. I can also show you. This is what the shawl looks like, and I will also pop a picture of it up on the screen. So what I'm planning on doing colorway wise is use the light purple for the lightest color, the medium dark turquoise for the second color, and then the dark purple for the darkest color. I really like how those 3 look together, and I love the lighter turquoise. I just would much rather use those 3 for this shawl. And I was just scrolling through Instagram yesterday. It popped up on my feed, and I immediately purchased the pattern because it is exactly what I've been looking for. It does have some very simple color work in it. I like color work, but I much prefer doing textured knits, so I would prefer easy color work over more complicated color work. So I'm really excited to make those, or make that, I guess. And so I'm counting dyeing the yarn as its own finished project, and then I will have obviously the finished project when I finish the shawl. Something else that I made are these yarn cozies. I made them on my circular sock machine. I did, for this one, a 70 row hung hem, and then I did a 27 needle toe because I was using my 54 cylinder. And then I just grafted it closed like I would any other toe, and it gives it a nice flat bottom, and this just helps keep my yarn organized. So I have those done. I made 2 of those, and One of them is made out of this light turquoise. Another one is made out of a very similar turquoise that I dyed. So I will definitely be making more of those using the light turquoise because it only takes around 18 grams of yarn. So I will be able to make several. And then finally, my last finished object, which I am most excited about, is my Amy cardigan by Hoagie Locatelli. This is what it looks like. I will pop up a picture of it on the screen with me wearing it. I am in love. I used Universal Yarns Bamboo Pop for this, which is a cotton bamboo blend. And then I got these buttons at Jackman's, which is my local fabric shop. This pattern is originally a striped cardigan, but I already had this yarn in stash. My grandmother got it for me for one of my birthdays, and I wanted to use it up, and I also knew that I could hit gauge with the yarn. I do really struggle with hitting gauge because I am such a tight knitter that when patterns call for looser gauges for the weight of yarn, I struggle with making the fabric look really nice and consistent. So thankfully this was one that I hit gauge very easily with, and I made the second size, but I did make some adjustments which are in my Ravelry project page. I made the armhole of it deeper. I think with my other one, since a lot of Hoagie's patterns are drop shoulder, I'm not going to make the armholes as deep. I'm going to stick closer to what the pattern calls for and just figure out and see if I like the fit of it. If I don't, then I can always frog back and add more length. So I'm very pleased with how this turned out. The yarn is nice and lightweight, but it's also really warm and cozy. I wore it all day yesterday and absolutely love it. And I really like how oversized it is. I think I measured around a 43-inch bust after it was blocked. So it fits really nicely. My stitch gauge was pretty spot on. It might have been just a little bit bigger in my gauge swatch, but my row gauge was shorter, so I did make some adjustments to the pattern based off of that. What I loved about how it was written was it said knit to this length instead of knit X amount of rows, so I was able to more easily adjust the pattern that way. And something interesting I found about my knitting is my row gauge in the round is typically less than in the flat. So I got 7 stitches per inch in the round for my row gauge. And then I got around 8 stitches per inch working flat. And then my stitch gauge was spot on, the exact same as when I work flat. So in the future, I think I might try going down a needle size when I do the sleeves on a cardigan. I am going to swatch before I make that decision because I would really hate for it to be drastically different and then mess up the pattern. Another thing that I did on this, which was different, was a much longer cuff. I thought that I had knit this sleeve to the right point before adding the cuff, and then I tried it on after I got probably that much of the cuff done, and it was only like here. So I did add a longer cuff so that it fit sleeve wise a lot better. But all in all, I am really pleased with how this cardigan turned out. And I guess let's move on to works in progress next. So the first work in progress that I am working on making is the Tied Knots hat. I will pop up the name of the designer on the screen because I will butcher the name. It is a gorgeous cabled pattern, and it is out of a DK weight yarn. Let me pull up the yarn. It is, I know the colorway is Blue Fire, and the yarn is Moon Tower Dye Works in the Encledius DK. I will link it down below. I got it from the Yarn Adventure Truck. And for this hat, I've decided to do a sewn brim. So I did 4 inches of ribbing, and then I'm going to tuck it under like that and sew it down. I much prefer the look of a sewn brim over a folded one. Though, because I did the 4 inches of ribbing, it does look a lot neater with it folded than this hat does. This one you can see the pearl bumps, which I don't love. So I could technically do a fold brim on this one. I will decide after I'm finished, just based off of what I'm feeling. And it is a really great pattern. I've really enjoyed working on it. My surgeon yesterday walked in while I was working on it and saw my chart and immediately asked me what I was working on and thought that the chart looked so cool. It is charted out really nicely, and the written instructions are very nice. For the brim, I am used 3.25 millimeter, and then for the body of the hat, I am using 3.75 millimeter. This yarn is a heavier DK weight. It has 250 yards per 115 grams. So in my opinion, it is closer to a worsted weight yarn, but sorry about that. I am very happy with how it is working up. It's nice and stretchy, and it's going to be nice and warm, and I am obsessed with the color of it. So there's that whip. Next, I am working on the Boxy Cape by Hoagie Locatelli. It is going to be for my mom. I am doing size 54 for her, and I am pretty close to being finished with the back. I'm not sure if I'm able to have the whole thing in screen, but this is what it is looking like so far. I am using Juniper Moon Farms Cumulus in Blackberry, which is the black strand. I am holding 2 strands together, so I'm using Blackberry, which is the strand, and then Poppy Fields, or Poppy Meadow, and the Cumulus Degrade, which is a gradient version of the Cumulus. So I'm holding 2 strands together to hit gauge, which means that I did have to get 14 skeins of yarn total. So it does take up quite a bit of yarn. Like I was saying earlier, I have a hard time hitting gauge a lot of the time. So what I end up doing is using thicker yarn, and then I just buy the correct yardage out of that yarn. And it is really gorgeous. I love how it is working up, and I wasn't very sure about how I liked it at first, but now that I'm seeing it on camera, I am really happy with it, and my mom is in love with the fabric. So it is working up exactly how I want it to. This is what the inside looks like, which also looks equally as cool. I like that it has a nice thick ribbing on the bottom. It's about 4 inches of ribbing, and it's working up pretty quickly. I've done from this stitch marker up to the top since last Thursday, so I've done a ton on this. It took me a while to get this done because I was working on other projects and it was not my priority, but I do want to get this finished by November 30th so that I have my December knitting for me, and also I can have it done for Christmas for my mom and have it for her to wear when it is cold instead of only her only having a couple of wears out of it. So I am very pleased with how that is working up, and it is so soft and airy, but I can tell it's going to be a nice warm fabric as well. And then I have one more WIP, which is the Bookish Cardigan by Annie Lupton. I am using, let me pull it up real quick, there we go, Potion yarn in their Temptress DK, and the colorway is Imaginary Friends. It is a gorgeous purple and turquoise gradient. I am alternating the skeins as I work on this so that there is no pooling. And this is what I have finished so far. I've done 2 full cable repeats, and it has really nice bobbles, which I love. I like how these bobbles are done. They are crocheted bobbles instead of knit ones, so they are quite a bit easier. And then it has these gorgeous cables running throughout, and some seed stitch and reverse stockinette. And then with the ribbing down here, I did decide to make that part longer, and I am going to make the cardigan in general longer. I'm doing 12 inches before the neck decreases instead of 8 because I would like it to hit lower on my waist. And this yarn is really lovely to work with. It has gorgeous drape to it, super soft, and the colors just gorgeous. These are my colors. These are absolutely my favorite colors. The way that it is worked is bottom up, you work your 2 front panels, you work your back panel, then you seam it together, which I will probably use my sewing machine to seam because I hate hand seaming things. And then you pick up stitches for your button band and you pick up stitches for your sleeves. So this is going to be the, let's see, right front, if I remember correctly, because I knit left-handed Eastern European style, so I knit opposite of typical. So when I follow my chart, I follow left to right on the right side rows and then right to left on my wrong side rows instead of the opposite. And then when I do my neckline decreases, I will be working them on this side, which is going to be on my right side instead of working them on the other side. So there's that pattern. I am in love with it. I've been waiting to cast it on. I was going to finish my mom's boxy cape before I did this, but I couldn't help myself. I casted it on yesterday, and I've done all of this since yesterday afternoon. So it does work up pretty quick. I have to pay a lot of attention to what I am doing though. So I can't really watch.
I'm not sure I understand.
I can't really watch anything while I'm working on it. Instead, I've been listening to my book, but there are some sections where I do have to pause. And since I am knitting left-handed, I do my cables opposite. So where it says to do the left twist, I actually do the right twist and where it says to do the right twist, I do the left twist, and that way my cables are twisted the correct way. So I am very pleased with how that is working up. I cannot wait to have it finished. My goal is to get that done by November 20th. I would like to ideally have both fronts done by next Tuesday when I film my next podcast episode. So let's see if I can do it. And those are my only whips for today. So I thought we could go into some acquisitions. I really failed at not buying yarn, and I need to go on a yarn diet. I have a ton of sweater quantities of yarn, so I want to make at least 2 or 3 sweaters before I get more yarn, because I am into making sweaters at the moment. So the first thing I have is the Cumulus in the Blackberry and the Cumulus Degrade in Peppy Meadows. This is what I'm using for my mom's boxy cape, and this is the Blackberry, and then this is the Poppy Meadows. It is gorgeous. I love how it looks held together. It's super soft yarn, and it is from Juniper Moon Farms. I got these at my work at YarnCom, and we do still have both of these colorways left. If I remember correctly, we might have sold some. I'm not 100% sure, but we do have quite a bit of Cumulus there, so if you want to check it out, you can go there if you're in the area. Next, I got, where is it? There we go. I got the Potions yarn Temptress DK and the Imaginary Friends, which I'm using for my bookish cardigan. It is so pretty. I am in love with the colors. It has really nice blues and purples, and it does still have some of the natural cream in there, so it adds some nice variation. This yarn is a DK weight, super soft. It's 231 yards per 100 grams. I highly recommend you look at Potions yarn. They are incredible. I will link them below. We actually just had a trunk show, which is where I got this from. So I am in love. Next, and I got 4 of these and 7 of each of these. I have the Madeline Tosh DK in Astrid Gray. It is a gorgeous gray with black speckles, and then it also has some colored speckles. Like here it has some rust in it. It does have some red, some blues. It's such a fun yarn, which I'm guessing it's where the dye molecules broke, but it adds some really nice variation. I got 6 of these, and I'm going to make the Granny Cardigan by Hoagie Locatelli with this. Next, I have this Heritage 6. It is a gorgeous mauve color, and the colorway is 5705. I love the color. It is so soft. It's 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. And it is considered a DK weight, but for my gauge, it is more of a sport weight. It has 292 yards per 100 grams. And I also got 6 of these, and I'm planning on doing the Monstera cardigan by Hoagie Locatelli. If you can't tell, I love her patterns. It will definitely be later this winter when I start it. And I plan on adding the button band, so that's why I got extra, so that I had enough to add that. It's so soft. I cannot wait to be able to wear this. And then finally, I have this Gem States Yarns and Notions, and this gorgeous orange. It is a lot brighter on camera than it is in person. Let me turn off my ring light and see if that helps. It does not. It just makes everything dark. It is a gorgeous burnt orange, which is actually the name of the colorway. And I'm planning on making the engraved cardigan. Let me pull it up real quick so I can tell you who it's by. It's the Engravings Cardigan by Rachel Ilsley. I will link it down below with most other things. And I love that it comes with these little like tags to put on your projects. And this is a DK weight, and it has 246 yards per 100 grams. I originally bought 4 of these, and I decided I wanted to make a longer cardigan, so I purchased a 5th one, which is on its way. I was really wanting to make something with a burnt orange, and so my mom and I started looking, and I found this on Etsy, and it is perfect. It is the exact color I was looking for. Oh, I'm so excited, if you couldn't tell. And I highly recommend you go check out Gem State Yarns and Notions. They are a small business, and I love supporting small businesses when I can. So those are all of my acquisitions. I know I say all, but there was a lot. I got a lot, which is why I need to go on a yarn diet. I did de-stash some yarn that I'm going to take to a local library that has a program where you can do a yarn swap or de-stash your yarn so that others can use it. And a lot of it is yarn that I've either used most of it and I have a few spare skeins, or I'm allergic to, so I can't use it anymore. So I'm very happy that I found that program. My grandmother actually told me about it, and that way the yarn can actually get used. I have made a lot of progress this past month and a half. It was a little overwhelming gathering everything up, which is why I'm going to start doing weekly podcasts, which I know I'm not going to have finished objects each week, but it'll still be fun to talk about my whips and my dreams and what I'm looking forward to making. Thank you so much for watching. If this is your first time seeing one of my videos, welcome. If you've stuck to the end, you're amazing. Please like, subscribe, and comment for more videos, and I will see you in the next podcast.